Have you ever wondered why the first campfires were used more like weapons than for comfort? Imagine the sun dropping below the horizon. Feel the immediate drop in temperature against your bare skin. As the light fades, the human body undergoes a terrifying biological failure. The pupils dilate, desperate to pull in whatever fading light remains. But it is not enough. It takes the human eye up to 45 minutes to fully adapt to the sudden pitch-black environment of the ancient world. During those 45 minutes, you are effectively blind. You cannot see the tall grass moving just a few feet away. You cannot see the massive shadows separating from the tree line. But out in that darkness, there are things that can see you perfectly. They do not need 45 minutes to adjust. They hunt by scent, by the thermal glow of your body heat, and by the sound of your accelerated heartbeat thumping rapidly in your chest. This was the daily reality for our ancestors. Night was not a time for quiet rest. It was a time of absolute, suffocating vulnerability. Deep inside Swartkrans Cave in South Africa, archaeologists have unearthed something that paints a chilling picture of how early humans survived this nightly terror. Buried deep in the dirt are heavy layers of ash and heavily burned bones dating back roughly 1 million years. It is some of the earliest signature evidence of controlled fire. But nestled near these ancient rings of ash is a haunting object, a charred skull of a cave lion pushed to the very edge of the burned earth. It sits exactly at the perimeter, right where the violent heat would have ended and the total darkness would have begun. That scorched skull tells a story that modern people have completely forgotten. When we picture early humans, we imagine them sitting peacefully in a tight circle, warming their hands, roasting meat, and bonding as a tribe. We imagine the ancient campfire as the very first living room. But the archaeological record, written in ash and bone, suggests a much darker reality. Those early flames were not built deep inside the caverns where the sleeping areas were most insulated from the wind. They were built directly across the mouths of the caves, creating a literal wall of heat and blinding light. The first fires were not cozy. They were violent, loud, erratic, and deeply uncomfortable. They spit burning embers into the air and choked the enclosed spaces with thick gray smoke that stung the eyes and burned the throat with every breath. To stay near the fire meant enduring physical pain. It meant coughing through the night, inhaling toxic particulates, and waking up with lungs heavy with soot. It meant eyes watering so badly you could barely keep them open, but you stayed close anyway, because the alternative was stepping away from the smoke, out into the clean, crisp night air where giant predators were pacing back and forth, waiting for the flames to die. The human body was utterly defenseless. We had no thick armor, no venom, no sharp fangs, and no speed to outrun a hungry monster in the dark. Our only defense was to capture a terrifying force of nature and keep it alive in the dirt. We are taught that fire was invented to cook meat and keep warm. But the first humans did not guard fire to eat. They guarded it so they would not be eaten. When modern people think of a campfire, they picture something completely domesticated. We imagine dry logs neatly stacked in a metal ring, burning cleanly while people sit back in folding chairs. If the smoke blows in our direction, we simply shift our chairs to the other side. We control the ventilation. We control the fuel. We control the environment. But early fire was not a tool that had been fully mastered. It was a captive wild animal, and keeping it alive in the dirt required extreme physical suffering. The first fires were built using whatever fuel could be scrounged from the surrounding landscape. That meant gathering damp branches, green leaves, rotting wood, and when timber was scarce, dried animal dung or animal fat. When these materials burn, they do not produce a clean, invisible heat. They produce a thick, heavy, suffocating smoke. Because early humans often sought refuge in shallow caves, rock shelters, or natural depressions to avoid the wind, ventilation was practically non-existent. The smoke did not magically float up and disappear. It curled along the stone ceilings, gathered in thick clouds, and eventually sank right back down to the cave floor where the group was forced to huddle. Imagine breathing this air for 10 hours straight. Your eyes run constantly with stinging tears. Your throat feels like it has been scrubbed with coarse sand. Every deep breath triggers a coughing fit. The air is thick with carbon monoxide and microparticulates that embed themselves deep into lung tissue. Modern studies of ancient skeletal remains and fossilized respiratory systems often reveal severe evidence of smoke inhalation and lung disease. These early people were breathing highly toxic air every single night of their lives. And the smoke was only half of the problem. Fire fundamentally breaks human senses. When you stand next to a bright, crackling blaze in the pitch black, your night vision is instantly destroyed. The light reflects off the surrounding rocks and trees, creating an impenetrable wall of darkness just a few yards away. You cannot see what is out there. At the same time, the loud popping, hissing, and crackling of the burning wood masks the subtle sounds of the wilderness. You cannot hear the snapping twigs or the shifting grass. By staying close to the fire, ancient humans effectively made themselves blind and deaf to the surrounding environment. They were trapped inside a small, glowing, suffocating bubble. This introduces one of the most brutal trade-offs in human history. Every evening, early humans were forced to make a terrible choice. They could step away from the fire, out into the clean, cool night air where they could breathe easily and hear the world around them. Or they could stay huddled together in the choking dirt, eyes burning, coughing up black soot, completely blind to the darkness around them. They chose the poison. They chose the blinding light and the lung-destroying smoke. They chose to sit next to the suffocating heat, night after night, generation after generation. They did not do this because they liked the warmth. They did not do this because sitting around a fire was a relaxing way to end the day. They endured this physical torture because it was the only way to survive until morning. The fire was not a luxury. It was a barricade. To understand why an entire species willingly damaged their lungs and blinded themselves every single night, you have to look past the smoke. You have to understand the sheer scale of the monsters waiting for them just outside the ring of light. If you stepped out of the choking smoke and into the Pleistocene night, your body would immediately betray you. You sweat, which means you leave a continuous, heavy scent trail in the air. You walk on two legs, which makes your silhouette tall and highly visible against the horizon. You do not have soft, padded paws, so your heavy human heels crush dry leaves and snap loose twigs with every clumsy step. To the creatures sharing this landscape, you are not a hunter. You are a slow, noisy, highly scented package of meat moving blindly through the dark. Modern humans suffer from a severe evolutionary amnesia. Because we sit comfortably at the top of the food chain today, we assume our ancestors always held that position. We like to imagine early humans as brave warriors, standing tall with sharpened spears, dominating the wilderness. But for the vast majority of human history, we were squarely in the middle of the food web. We were a prey species, and the predators hunting us were not the manageable animals you see behind glass in a modern zoo. They were hyper-carnivores built on a scale that defies modern imagination. The fossil record found in ancient caves tells a brutal story. Paleontologists have uncovered the fossilized remains of early hominins deep inside ancient predator dens. These bones bear the unmistakable, crushing puncture wounds of giant fangs. The ancient landscape was patrolled by animals like the giant short-faced bear, which could stand over 10 feet tall, and the cave hyena, a creature significantly heavier than its modern descendants. These hyenas possessed jaws evolved to crush the thickest megafauna bones into splinters to extract the marrow. Cracking a human skull required no more effort from a cave hyena than you would use to bite into an apple. There were saber-toothed cats with muscular, heavy builds resembling modern bears, designed to wrestle massive prey to the ground and sever vital arteries in seconds. There were cave lions, nearly a third larger than the lions we know today, capable of sprinting through the pitch black without hesitating. These animals possessed advanced olfactory systems that could smell human sweat from incredible distances and specialized retinas that gathered even the faintest starlight. They did not just happen to eat humans when they stumbled across them. Evidence suggests that in many regions, weak, slow-moving primates were an active and reliable part of their diet. When the sun went down, the ancient world belonged entirely to them. If a group of early humans was caught out in the open after dusk, the outcome was mathematically certain. Humans cannot outrun a cave lion. Humans cannot overpower a pack of giant hyenas. A wooden stick or a chipped stone is practically useless against 600 pounds of muscle and teeth lunging out of the black brush. The human body is incredibly fragile. A single swipe from a predator of that size would shatter ribs, sever tendons, or open the abdomen instantly. This was the terrifying arithmetic of ancient survival. The physical environment was engineered to kill us with cold, and the biological environment was engineered to eat us in the dark. Without thick hides to deflect claws, without venom to strike back, and without the fast-twitch muscle fiber to flee, early humans had completely run out of biological defenses. They had only one option left. If they wanted to survive the night, they had to steal a piece of the sun, drag it down into the dirt, and use it as a shield. The archaeological record proves this desperate reality. If you travel to Wonderwork Cave in the northern Cape of South Africa, you will find a massive cavern stretching deep into the earth. For decades, researchers assumed that if early humans used fire here, they would build it deep inside the cave, far away from the freezing wind and the driving rain. That is what a modern camper would do. You find the deepest, driest, most insulated corner, and you build your hearth. But when archaeologists carefully excavated the microscopic layers of ash and burned sediment dating back over 1 million years, they found something entirely different. The oldest fires were not in the back of the cave. The deepest concentrations of ash were found much closer to the entrance. This placement makes absolutely no sense if the primary goal is comfort. A fire near the mouth of a massive cave will have its heat stripped away by the wind. It will be exposed to violent storms. It will blow blinding smoke directly back into the living space where the tribe is trying to rest. But it makes perfect sense if your primary goal is survival. Early humans were not building a central hearth to warm their hands. They were building a thermal gate. By laying a continuous line of fire across the entrance of the rock shelter, they created a border that animals instinctively refused to cross. To maintain this barricade, they had to be ruthless with their fuel. We often picture ancient campfires crackling with thick, dry wooden logs, but wood burns quickly. It requires constant foraging. If the flames dipped too low, the shadows would stretch into the cave and the barrier would fall. In many ancient sites like Swartkrans, researchers have found heavily burned bones mixed into the ancient ash. Early humans were throwing the shattered skeletal remains of dead animals into the flames. Bone is highly porous and soaked in marrow and fat. When you throw it into a roaring fire, it does not just crackle. It burns intensely hot, and it burns for hours. It also produces a thick, foul-smelling smoke that carries the scent of burning death out into the night air. Think about what that means. You are sitting in the dirt, breathing in the horrific smell of charred animal fat and scorching bone. It is an offensive, nauseating odor. But out in the brush, the giant hyenas and saber-toothed cats smell the exact same thing. To a predator, the scent of aggressively burning bone is unnatural. It is a warning sign. It signals that the creatures inside that cave are manipulating something volatile and dangerous. That charred cave lion skull found at the edge of the ash ring was not a hunting trophy. It was a casualty of this nightly border war. For the entire night, the tribe was physically trapped behind their own creation. If a child wandered too close to the cave mouth, they risked severe burns. If an adult needed to relieve themselves, they had to do it in the dirt near the back of the cave, because stepping past the fire line meant instantly becoming prey. The fire was a warden just as much as it was a protector, but it worked. This was survival engineering at its most brilliant and desperate. They had analyzed their environment, recognized their complete physical inferiority, and engineered a continuous chemical reaction to artificially close the entrance to their homes. They had successfully weaponized light and heat. They were no longer just hiding in the dark. They were holding the dark back. They were not just building a fire. They were building a weapon. And soon, they learned how to go on the offensive. Once they learned to build the thermal wall at the cave entrance, something shifted in the ancient human mind. They realized that if fire could keep monsters out of their shelter, it could also push them off a fresh kill. This is where the story of our ancestors shifts from desperate defense to calculated offense. Imagine the midday savanna. The air is thick with the copper smell of torn muscle and open organs. A massive predator, perhaps a giant hyena or a saber-toothed cat, stands over a downed megafauna carcass. Its face is slick with blood, its heavy jaws cracking the thick ribs of its prey. Genetically, this animal is hardwired to violently defend its food against any challenger. It is larger, faster, and infinitely more lethal than the small group of primates watching from the tall grass. In the deep past, humans would have waited patiently for the carnivore to gorge itself, fall asleep, and leave. They would have sneaked in hours later, hoping to scrape whatever rotten, fly-covered scraps were left clinging to the spine. But with the mastery of fire, they no longer had to wait. Researchers call this aggressive behavior power scavenging. Instead of hiding, the humans step out of the brush. They are carrying thick, slow-burning branches salvaged from the cave hearth, swinging them through the air so the rushing oxygen feeds the glowing embers into roaring flames. They walk directly toward the feeding monster. This is a moment of profound evolutionary awe. You have the weakest, slowest creature on the landscape marching straight toward one of the deadliest, armed with nothing but burning wood and cooperative courage. The predator turns to defend its kill, but it is met with a wall of blinding light and scorching heat. The humans thrust the flaming branches forward. Sparks land on the cat's highly sensitive, wet nose. Thick smoke fills its lungs, triggering an immediate, blinding panic. No animal on Earth has an evolutionary defense against fire. It defies all natural laws of combat. The predator does not understand what is happening, only that the pain is immediate and unnatural. Confused and terrified, the apex predator abandons its fresh kill and retreats into the brush. The humans step forward and claim the carcass. They did not have to track the giant herbivore. They did not have to risk being gored by tusks or crushed by heavy hooves. They let the apex carnivores do the exhausting, highly dangerous work of the hunt, and then they use their captured weapon to simply steal the prize. When you view it through this lens, that charred cave lion skull found pushed into the ancient ash perimeter begins to look less like a warning and more like a testament to a shift in power. Humans were no longer just surviving the monsters, they were bullying them. This single behavioral leap completely changed the trajectory of human evolution. By stealing fresh, high-quality meat and untouched bone marrow directly from the jaws of predators, human caloric intake skyrocketed. They were injecting massive amounts of rich fat and protein into their diets without paying the physical, deadly cost of hunting. This was not primitive scavenging. This was tactical survival engineering. They had successfully hacked the prehistoric food chain. But this incredible new power came with a heavy, inescapable burden. A sharpened stone spear or a chipped hand axe can be dropped in the dirt and picked up 3 days later, completely unchanged. Fire cannot. Fire is a living, breathing parasite. It is a starving entity that must be constantly fed, monitored, protected from the wind, and sheltered from the rain. If the embers died on the long trek back to the rock shelter, the group was instantly plunged right back to the bottom of the food chain. The weapon demanded total, obsessive devotion, and the psychological toll of keeping this demanding force alive every single night would soon change the human brain forever. To keep the fire alive meant someone had to stay awake. For millions of years of primate evolution, sleep was dictated entirely by the sun. When it grew dark, you found a safe place, and you slept. But the invention of the thermal barricade shattered that natural biological rhythm. Fire does not sleep. It consumes fuel constantly, and if the flames are allowed to die down, the protective heat barrier across the cave entrance drops. The sudden drop in light and temperature is a direct invitation to the predators waiting in the brush. This meant the entire tribe could no longer afford to be unconscious. At the same time, they had to invent the concept of the night watch. Imagine the sheer psychological weight of that responsibility. You are sitting in the dirt near the cave entrance. The rest of your tribe, your family, your children, are completely unconscious behind you, vulnerable and totally dependent on your actions. The cavern is filled with the soft sounds of heavy breathing. Your eyes are heavy. Your muscles ache from a day of foraging and moving across the brutal landscape. Every biological instinct in your body is screaming at you to close your eyes and rest. But if you fall asleep, the wood burns down to ash. The light fades. The shadows stretch deeper into the cavern. and the ancient monsters, who have been pacing just outside the perimeter waiting for exactly this mistake, will step over the dying embers. If you close your eyes, everyone you know will be slaughtered in the dark. This single dynamic completely rewired human psychology. It introduced a level of high-stakes trust that no other animal on Earth had ever experienced. When an ancient human went to sleep, they were not just closing their eyes. They were handing their life and the lives of their children over to the person sitting by the fire. This forced the group to rely on each other in a way that went far beyond simply hunting together or sharing food. It required a profound, terrifying social contract. Because the stakes were absolute life and death, the social consequences were equally severe. If a fire watcher was caught sleeping, they were not just making a small mistake. They were endangering the entire genetic line of the group. Researchers believe this intense pressure may have accelerated the development of complex social rules, intense group anxiety, and severe social punishment. You had to prove you were reliable. You had to prove you could fight your own biology to keep the parasite alive. The fire demanded discipline, and those who could not provide it were likely banished from the warmth, which was an immediate death sentence in the freezing, predator-filled landscape. But there was also an unexpected intimacy born from this terror. The fire trapped the group in a tight circle of light for 10 to 12 hours every single night. They could not wander off. They could not safely explore the dark. They were forced into close physical and psychological proximity, night after night, breathing the same smoky air, listening to the same terrifying sounds outside the perimeter. They sat shoulder to shoulder, feeling the radiant heat on their skin, sharing the fear, and staring into the same hypnotic, shifting flames, while the rest of the world vanished into blackness. This forced proximity around the glowing embers did more than just keep the monsters away. It accidentally built the foundation of human society. The thermal barricade solved the immediate problem of being eaten, but it created an entirely new dilemma. It gave early humans something they had never possessed before. It gave them empty time. For millions of years, the biological clock of our ancestors was strictly bound to the sun. When daylight vanished, the eyes became useless, the temperature plummeted, and the brain naturally slipped into unconsciousness. But now, the tribe was awake. They were physically trapped behind a wall of blinding light for up to 10 hours a night, surrounded by an impenetrable darkness they could not safely enter. They could not hunt. They could not gather. They could only sit in the dirt, feed the dying embers, and wait for dawn. This forced captivity completely changed the architecture of human interaction. Imagine sitting in that smoky circle, listening to the heavy breathing of the massive predators pacing just beyond the light. To keep the fire watcher awake, the group had to interact. Researchers believe this extended artificial daylight acted as an evolutionary pressure cooker for the development of complex language. When you cannot see your environment, you have to describe it. Storytelling was not invented as a form of artistic entertainment. It was a vital piece of survival technology. It was a way to keep the mind alert during the terrifying night watch, and a way to orally map the landscape, memorizing the habits of the monsters outside and the locations of fresh water. While they were talking to stay awake, they were also tinkering with the weapon itself. At some point in our deep history, pieces of scavenged meat and shattered bone inevitably fell into the searing coals. When humans pulled those charred scraps from the ash and ate them, they triggered a biological revolution. Raw meat and tough fibrous plants require a massive amount of physical energy and time to chew and digest. Early hominins had incredibly large, heavy digestive tracts designed to slowly break down these brutal, low-yield calories. But by exposing their scavenged food to high heat, ancient humans were effectively pre-digesting it outside of their own bodies. The fire was doing the mechanical work of the stomach. The fossil record shows exactly what happened next. Over generations, the human digestive tract began to dramatically shrink. We no longer needed a massive gut to process raw savanna scraps. This anatomical shift created a sudden, massive surplus of biological energy within the body. And the human organism redirected every ounce of that extra power upward, straight into the skull. The human brain, an organ that consumes a staggering 20% of the body's daily caloric intake, began to rapidly expand. We did not become intelligent and then invent fire. We captured a weapon to keep the monsters away, and sitting next to that weapon, accidentally cooked our food, which physically grew our brains. The cognitive ability to calculate, to build, to invent, and to conquer was literally forged in the choking smoke of a defensive cave barricade. Every towering city, every agricultural revolution, and every piece of modern technology can trace its lineage straight back to a group of terrified primates huddled in the dirt, throwing animal fat into the flames to keep the giant hyenas at bay. They tamed the night and built entire empires from the ashes. But the fear of what was waiting out there in the dark never truly went away. That intense evolutionary pressure did not just reshape the human stomach and the human brain, it permanently rewired the human nervous system. We like to believe that we are entirely modern creatures, completely detached from the brutal realities of the Pleistocene. We live in secure buildings, we walk down illuminated streets, and we buy our food wrapped in plastic under fluorescent lights. But your body has not forgotten the ancient world. The millions of years our ancestors spent huddled in the dirt, coughing through the smoke to keep giant predators at bay, left a permanent scar on human psychology. Think about how you behave when you go camping today. When the sun goes down, everyone naturally drags their chairs into a tight circle around the fire. Conversation flows easily. You find yourself staring into the shifting orange coals, entering a state of deep, hypnotic calm. Your blood pressure drops, your breathing slows, you feel safe. Have you ever wondered why staring at a burning pile of wood is so universally relaxing to the human mind? It is not just because the heat feels pleasant. It is a deep evolutionary reflex. For your ancient ancestors, sitting next to a roaring fire was the only time they were not actively being hunted. Your brain still rewards you with a profound sense of chemical relief when you are close to the flame, because for most of human history, light was the only thing standing between you and being eaten alive. This ancient echo goes far beyond actual campfires. Look at your daily habits in the modern world. What do you do when night falls in your home? You likely sit in a dim room, surrounded by shadows, staring into the bright, glowing rectangle of a television, a computer monitor, or a phone screen. We feel an immense, irrational comfort scrolling through a brightly lit screen in the pitch black. We do not realize what we are physically simulating. We are recreating the ancestral cave. We are sitting in the dark, bathed in an artificial glow, feeling secure because we are behind a wall of light. We even arrange our living room furniture in a tight semicircle around the glowing box, just as our ancestors once arranged themselves around the hearth. The instinct to gather around the light is matched only by our lingering, completely irrational fear of the dark. As a modern adult, you know there are no saber-toothed cats hiding in your hallway. You know there are no giant hyenas waiting outside your bedroom window. Your home has heavy deadbolts, solid walls, and a secure roof. Yet, if you walk through your house at 2 a.m. without turning on the lights, you feel a distinct prickle of unease on the back of your neck. If you hear an unexpected sound in the pitch black, your entire biological system reacts instantly. Your heart rate violently accelerates. Your pupils dilate to their absolute limit. Your hearing sharpens, filtering out background noise to isolate the potential threat. You are not reacting to a modern danger. Your body is running a million-year-old survival program. The panic you feel in the dark is an inherited memory from the people who sat in the choking smoke, knowing exactly what was pacing just outside the perimeter. We have wrapped the globe in electrical grids and continuous artificial daylight to convince ourselves that the night is finally defeated. We like to think the monsters are gone and the dark is harmless, but you do not realize how thin that illusion truly is. You do not realize it, but every time the power goes out, your ancient brain wakes up. If you travel back to Swartkran's cave today, the ancient world feels entirely silent. The heavy smoke cleared a long time ago. The violent, hissing sounds of burning bone have been replaced by the quiet drip of groundwater and the soft movement of air through the cavern. But buried deep in the sediment, pressed into the dirt by a million years of geological time, the perimeter still remains. The ash line marks the exact boundary where an incredibly weak species decided they were no longer willing to be eaten in the dark. And resting right at the edge of that burned earth is the haunting reminder of what that decision cost. The charred skull of the cave lion, pushed just outside the reach of the dying flames, is not just a piece of ancient debris. It is a monument to a brutal, forgotten war. It represents a turning point in the history of the planet. For the first time, a prey species did not grow thicker skin, sharper claws, or faster legs to survive. Instead, they captured a volatile chemical reaction, fed it the fat of dead animals, and used it to burn the noses of monsters. Today, we look at that skull through the thick glass of a museum display case. The predators that terrorized our ancestors are gone, the cave lions are extinct. The giant hyenas that could crush a human femur with one bite have faded into the fossil record. We won the war of the night. We paved over the ancient savannas, we replaced the terrified night watch with silent electronic security systems, and we traded the suffocating toxic smoke of the cave hearth for clean, invisible electricity. Because of this overwhelming victory, we suffer from the illusion that comfort is our natural state. We complain when a room is slightly too cold. We grow frustrated when our food takes too long to arrive. We believe that safety is guaranteed. But modern comfort is a very thin, very recent layer of paint over a brutally violent history. For 99% of human existence, there was no such thing as guaranteed safety. You survived by choosing the exact type of pain you were willing to endure. You either inhaled poison to stay warm, or you breathed clean air and bled out in the tall grass. The people who sat choking in the dirt at Swartkrans were not primitive, unthinking creatures. They were brilliant, desperate survival engineers who paid an unimaginable physical toll so that their children could see the morning. They broke the natural food chain. They cooked their scavenged meat, accidentally expanding the very brains that would eventually build modern civilization. You do not just share a genetic lineage with them, you are operating their machinery. Your body is the direct, physical result of their terrifying nights. Your stomach, your eyes, and your deeply wired social need to belong to a trusted group were all forged behind a barricade of burning wood. We have built a world of incredible comfort and blinding light to try and forget the prehistoric dark. But civilization is new, and survival is older. The ancient world did not disappear, it became your nervous system.